This episode of the Occasional Podcast is brought to you by the LSA Group, the new high-end, high-value speaker standard, and also Core Power, state-of-the-art power at real-world prices. Today's episode is also brought to you by Cardas, lossless and high-res streaming and downloads. 50 million tracks in all genres in the best possible quality. Cardas supports the audio industry and appreciates the needs of discerning audiophiles. Try it for free now at Cardas.com. That's Qobuz.com. Hello, and welcome to the season finale of Season 4. You're in episode 10, and today we have a trifecta of wonderfulness to share with you. The first being our picks for the best products of 2020. Very exciting. We enlisted the help of two of our favorite podcasters, Grover Neville and Dave McNair. They share with us their favorite picks from a multitude of product categories. And believe me, these guys have heard a lot of products this year, so they've been very busy. So that's really fun. And also, we have an interview with Cardas and a long-asked question answered by these two people who obviously work at a cable company in the audiophile realm, but also worked in radio. And the question that I asked before the whole thing starts was, why does the same song always get played on the radio? Or even, why does the same group of songs get played on the radio constantly? And they actually do a really good job of fleshing that out and answering it for us. So I liked it. It's right at the beginning of the interview, and we'll get to that in just a second. But first, here are the picks for Product of the Year 2020. Take it away, Dave.
Hey, Brian. Thanks for having me on. So as far as my 2020 year-end wrap-up, I've got a couple things for you. I really enjoyed the Acora SRC2 speakers. Probably the favorite speakers I've had in this year. Extremely detailed, super accurate, incredible imaging. And at $37K a pair, actually a pretty darn good deal in the super performer speakers. As far as amplifiers, I've currently got a Macintosh 1502, which is a beast that sounds amazing. 16 tubes, 8 KT88s, 150 watts per channel. I'll be reviewing that, but my initial impressions are that it's really incredible sounding. Signal sources, I currently have a Charisma Signature 1 moving coil cartridge, which is currently my reference cartridge. I'll be reviewing that as well, but it's an incredible performer. As far as headphones, the Focal Stellias were pretty amazing. I mean, they should be at $3,000, but I felt like there's very few other things that can compare. Incredibly accurate, comfortable, easy to drive. If you're looking for a reference headphone, I think the Stellia is pretty far up there. Cabling and system accessories, I recently switched over to Cardas Clear and felt like it really made a significant difference in my system. I've also got a bunch of Furotech power cords, one of their power strips that also has some filtering in it, and it definitely quieted the system down. Right now my system is quieter than it's ever been.
Thanks, Dave. Those Acora SRC2 speakers are a beast, made out of solid granite. So it is one of those high-end luxury items, but I have heard them at shows as well, and they are killer in terms of quality sound reproduction. We also have Grover throwing in around here. Grover, what do you got for us?
The best speaker that I heard this year was the ProAc D30RS. Between the ribbon tweeter and the new Mica driver, there's just a lot of coherency, plenty of bass, super smooth treble, a really, really expressive and gorgeous mid-range. Overall, just a fantastic kind of do-it-all speaker that you would not expect for the price and for the size. The best amplifier that I heard this year was the Amps & Sound Zion monoblocks. These are based off of one of the old Harman Kardon Citation amplifiers with a bigger power supply, some updates, a few modifications, and they are one of the most tremendous amplifiers I've ever heard. Best headphones I heard this year were probably the Focal Utopias, one of the smoothest, most linear frequency responses out there, as well as a real sense of clarity and an extremely dynamic reproduction of transients especially. The best accessory or cable I heard this year would probably have to go to the Triode Wire Labs Spirit 2 interconnects. I found them both physically very, very easy to handle, very flexible, and very high quality, but also for the price, I found them to sound exceptional, very, very smooth, not dark, not bright, just transparent, and a great, great value for the money. The best source I heard this year was probably the SW1X DAC 3, based off of old Philips chips with a really, really interesting and cool tube output stage. There was a ton of clarity and also musical density at the same time, a great combination of musicality and technicality.
Thanks, Grover. I was actually one of the first people to review those Utopia headphones by Focal, and I totally agree. They have a great sense of spatial cues within that headphone compared to a lot of other ones on the market, so I love that pick. In terms of my own, I gotta say the QLN Signature 3 bookshelves. We've been on kind of a bookshelf tear lately, and this one is an outstanding loudspeaker that has an amazing sense of realism to me and power and dynamics for the size, and of course, for a bookshelf, the bass is amazing. So that is my pick for loudspeakers. Now, I have a combo pick for source and amp, which is unusual for me, but I'm into minimalism these days, and this particular all-in-one unit is by name. And I was kind of surprised by this, but it really has a lot of punch, probably the best 60, 70 watts of an amp I've heard in a while. But it's not just the amp that makes the magic. It is the sense of coherency between all the parts and the source and the digital streaming. There's a CD player. So the name Unity Star, all-in-one unit, managed to impress me greatly with its dynamics for the small size. Not only that, though, a very decent UI and, like I said, dynamic and responsive, as well as detailed and just meticulous in that retrieval. For accessories, I have to say, I got a pair of AudioQuest Thunderbird Zero speaker cables from the Mythical Creatures series that I've been mightily impressed with. I think they make a great complement to any system if you can get them in there. I got them with Spades. The build is incredible. The sound's really great. So a fun treat to yourself if you already have kind of a big high-end system that you want hooked up in a really robust way. For the headphone category, I was really impressed with the Dan Clark Audio, formerly known as Mr. Speakers, Ether 2 headphone system. It's a swappable ear pad system that allows you to kind of change the sound just ever so slightly with the ear pads. Good extension, good bass control, and Dan is one of those people who knows how to tune his headphones just right, to my ears at least. He always gets the balance right, and this is no exception. So a great pair of headphones. Today's episode is sponsored by Sonus Faber. Fine, handcrafted loudspeakers designed and manufactured in Vicenza, Italy. With over 35 years of advanced technological research and development, our elegant designs will allow you to experience an emotional connection with your music like never before. Discover your local dealer at sonusfaber.com. So here's our interview with Josh Meredith and Angela Cardas of Cardas Audio. We get a chance to pick their brains about hi-fi, cables, and history of the company, but also we get to finally answer the burning question: why do they always play the same song on the radio?
Why can't you do nice radio, Angie?
How is radio nice or not?
I don't know. My mom's like, oh, NPR, that'd be nicer.
Something dignified where you're talking about the news,
right?
And current events,
instead of hooking up with gross DJs,
right? Instead of party radio.
Party radio.
Well, I gotta know. So, hey, by the way, everybody, thanks for joining us. We have two very special guests. Wait, can I see your name tags real quick?
So special.
Yeah. We have two very special guests today: Josh Meredith Jr. and Angela.
I'm not
Cardas.
really a junior. I just put that on my name tag to see if they'd print it, and they did.
from Cardas Audio. And before we hit record here, we were just talking about how they both started in radio. And I was just really curious, like, how does one get into radio like that?
Okay, I will tell you exactly how I got into radio, and that was I flunked math senior term of my senior year of college. And the only professional experience I really had in the world was retail and radio in college. So basically, I went around and I sent my resume. I had to stay. So here, long story short, I failed math. I walked in graduation. I had to take one more math class, which was 8 o'clock in the morning, Monday through Friday, over the summer, right? So I had literally nothing to do for the entire rest of the day. So I sent my resume to all these radio stations. And one called me and was like, "Oh, you were so lucky. We're calling you. The job we're offering you, we could have 2 high school kids do for free. Why don't you come by, do a tour of the station next week? We'll talk about it." And I'm super excited, right? Like, this is great. I got a call on like the first day. This is awesome. And then the next day, or like 3 hours later, I got a call from another station that said, "Can you be on the air tonight?" And I went, "Sure.
Even better.
I will totally do that." And that's the radio station that my husband right here, Josh Meredith, was already working at.
But I wasn't her husband at the time.
No.
Nor an acquaintance.
No. But, I was, 21 and cute.
And I just remember, they hired a girl. And so I often think my boss is our boss back in those days is responsible for us getting married and the kid we have now.
Right.
Weird when you think about how fate pans out.
And that's the rest of the story.
Now you know.
Is there a kind of behind the scenes culture to the radio stations?
Yeah.
There's a very big station in LA called K-Rock, and the new kind of nighttime striker and these guys, they do this behind the scenes kind of feel like they talk about the office and this and that. Is there something unique about working on the radio?
There
that's
is.
different than other places.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty casual. There's no HR department. There are no rules. You feel like you're living 30 years ago in terms of the things that are happening and you're getting away with. And I guarantee you, those people are all having sex.
They actually often talk about like free stuff. So they have like a table and vendors and yada yada come in, they drop stuff off, and they're like, someone took this and this table, where it's like tchotchkes are just constantly flowing through the station and
we
all
were
this.
we were in a much smaller market than that.
Right, we didn't have the opportunity to take advantage of things like that.
But we got free hotel stays and we went to concerts.
Well,
and,
the concerts is the thing.
A lot of that.
Yeah, the radio station we worked at was country, and if you want to be a radio DJ, if that's your goal in your life, you don't go to the kind of music you like. You go to who's hiring, right? So, so we worked for a top 40 country music station, which is not exactly his cup of tea. I liked it, but
to me, it just simply became software. I'm just hit and play on these songs, and
for all the evidence,
and I'm working 5 hours a day, and I'm not necessarily sober the whole time. It was a good life.
So for the people who listen to a lot of terrestrial radio, why do they play the same songs over and over again? I think that's a lot of
It's
sales.
such a machine. It's such a business. You hear about these things like the top 40 and supposedly like the top 10 are supposedly the top 10 most popular songs in the country. No, there's a publicist working for the agent who represents the artist, and they argue amongst themselves for, this week so-and-so will have the top number one song, and then 2 weeks later so-and-so will switch into number one, and this person will go down to number 3. It's really phony.
The number one example of that was, do you remember Garth Brooks when he had his alter ego Chris Gaines?
I'm not a country fan, but I can imagine.
Well, he basically came out with an alter ego. He wanted to be cooler and dark and more, more mysterious. So he came out with an alter ego who was still Garth Brooks, but his name was Chris Gaines. And his record company basically gave away to all the biggest markets in the country, we're going to give away this Meet Garth Brooks package where you can meet him and stay at a hotel and go to the big scene, blah, blah, blah. He gave away all these things if you play his song 100 times this week. Right. So basically, Chris Gaines, who the hell is Chris Gaines, debuts at number 1 with this awful, god-awful
not a good song.
Well, it was terrible.
When a radio station gives away concert tickets or anything, a promoter has said to them, put this song in your top 10 and I'll give you 50 front row seats to give away.
And that's basically how
how the top 10 and the top 20 works.
I guess my question is, do they pay the people to play, or people
No,
just...
that would be illegal.
No, the other way. When I play your song, do I have to pay royalties on the radio?
Radio stations pay ASCAP
ASCAP
and BMI, which are licensing companies.
Yeah.
So they pay an extraordinary fee every year so they can legally play the music over the air.
Yeah.
But as far
That's for
as
everything.
what you play is quite a bit influenced by the music business.
Right. So I was the music director. So I got these phone calls all week long actually had the hours where these music companies would call me and tell me what they wanted me to play that week. Yeah. And I would go, yeah, sure. And then not because, I'm not going to play this person who's nobody's ever heard of.
Yeah.
And then, when Garth Brooks has a top 10 song, right? So it was all shit.
It's a lot of nonsense.
So if you had a really kick butt publicist, you could just finagle your way into a pretty good single.
Pretty much.
If you have a halfway decent song and a really strong marketing effort behind it, that's where number one singles come from.
Yeah,
the number one songs are not necessarily the catchiest or the best. They're just the ones that people have put the most into.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow, that's
it's all a scam.
Like the rest of life.
Yeah, exactly. It is.
There's no shocked expression on my face, even though you can't see me. But I am sad.
It is unfortunate.
Well, let's rewind it back a little bit and talk about Cardas Audio, because this is a company that has been around for quite a long time. I don't know what year the company exactly started.
1987.
How's your history?
We're working on 35 years almost now.
Oh, that's super fun.
Yeah, so we started in Southern California back in the 80s, and then my dad moved the company up to Bandon, Oregon in 1992. We're about an hour and a half north of the California border on the beautiful Oregon coast. And we very rarely have visitors, but you're welcome. It's not easy to get to.
We take care of our visitors because
do.
it is so difficult to get there.
We actually had a couple come visit us from Hawaii last week. And but yeah, it's the middle
Free
of
tours all day long.
Free tours all day long. Middle of nowhere, but we do all of our products, all of our cables are made here in the United States. They're finished by what we call our silent terminators in Bandon, Oregon, and we're real happy to be here.
Do you guys still make an earphone? Because I thought it was an earphone for a while.
We have two in-ear monitors. The EM5813 was the first one. Came out probably like 9-10 years ago.
Yeah, somewhere.
And the A8, which there's been several versions of. We're still manufacturing that, and that probably came out 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah. So, and we also make our other thing is over-ear headphone aftermarket cables.
Replacement
cables, yeah.
Yeah, so the wire business, though, remains the meat and potatoes of the company.
Yeah. Well, like the earbuds and the headphone cables are, a product unto themselves, but at the same time, an introduction to our product line for people who are maybe just kind of starting out in life or starting out in their interest in better audio, in the hopes that, somebody who buys $300 earbuds might someday spend quite a bit of money on a 2-channel system when they've achieved a little more success in life and settled down a bit.
When you guys talk to these gentlemen and interact with them on a marketing level, how do you kind of feel like they're different than the headphone guys from the 2-channel kind of?
Headphone guys are really passionate and really into it and have a lot of stuff. Like most of the 2-channel guys,
one system.
They're 40 years old plus. They have one system, and they may evolve it over the years. But the headphone guys have a headphone for every flavor. They collect them to some extent, not to own them, not to collect for collection's sake, but because each one has its own purpose.
Well, even me. I have a bunch of headphones, and I have closed back, and I have in ears, and I have open back, and you have the headphone market. The portable audio department, basically what we call it, is a passionate market, and it also is not just gentlemen. It is more diverse, I would say, than the 2-channel market. There's we're going to have Can Jam next weekend in New York, and it's one of my very favorite shows because it skews younger and it skews more female, and so I obviously like that.
And the shows are all in a banquet room type of thing or a convention center, as opposed to, I like these hotel shows like we're at here at the Florida Audio Expo, but every room is its own thing, whereas Can Jam is an open floor. Everybody's got a table, so you really meet a lot of people.
Yeah, and you really can. As a consumer, you can bounce around between each one, and so you can go over there and listen to that, and then you can go over and listen to that, and you can compare and contrast a little more real time.
Yeah, and I think from a collector's standpoint, headphones are just way, way easier. I don't know how many speakers you guys got, but one pair around is just. And so
we've got like 3 or 4 pairs of speakers.
One pair that we use,
right? No,
I see. Like all 3 brands that we ever bought a room with, we use you all the time. But yeah, because I've seen these walls that these guys send pictures to me where it's like a cool little pegboard, and we just got, it's possible, is what I'm saying. It's a lot easier to have a nice collection, and then with the 2-channel, it's just like, I get what you're saying. It's like you got this thing, and it's not just about the speakers. It's like, I got the speakers, now I'm going to tinker with X, Y, Z, and you want to like refine what you already have a little bit more without replacing the whole thing.
I think it's more like a car. I think a 2-channel system's more like a car. So you buy the big thing. So the coolest thing to buy is the speakers, right? So the coolest thing to buy is the car, right? So you've got the car that you want. Then you start working with the transmission. So then that's the electronics. And then you've got it tweaked the way you want to sound it, but I don't know if I have it the way I want it yet. So then you start dealing with cables. And I always say that about cables. I totally get we're not fun. Totally get it. We are totally not as cool as speakers. I totally understand that. But, when you're actually trying to tweak it for the way that you listen, then that's when we come into play. So we're like, okay, well, what do you mostly listen to? Do you mostly stream? Do you mostly do vinyl? Do you mostly do this? So, we are more the very last fine tuning of a system. But with the headphones, you can have a different sound for whatever music you listen to, right? So if I'm going to listen to metal right now, so I'm going to have these headphones and this cable, and I think it's a lot more stuff for sure.
Yeah. And I think, too, for the naysayers of cable tech that are out there, with the headphone specifically, there's a point where you have the headphone and you love it, and you just want to try something different. And this is one of those elements where, regardless if you're like really into it or you don't believe it at all, it is a thing that you can change about something that you love, that lets you tweak it. And let's be honest, sometimes they look better, they feel better. Besides the sound, there are a lot of qualities that I think add to it.
And
There's
that's
two things. One is, as far as Cardas goes, we have a lifetime warranty. So your stock headphone cable probably doesn't.
No.
And one of the reasons Cardas Audio started making headphone cables is because we were in radio, and she was going through Sennheiser cables.
And I was poor.
And radio people don't make a lot of money. And she convinced her dad, like, you guys, Cardas Audio, before she worked there, should be making headphone cables.
Right, so I'm 21 and I'm looking at my dad. I'm like, this is what you do.
But the other thing is it's a closed circuit. So it's one thing to have a 2-channel system and say, I'm going to try a different pair of speaker cables. So you listen to a song or a part of a song, you turn off the amplifier so you don't blow anything up, you switch your speaker cables out, and 5 minutes later you sit back down to listen to the same song, and what do you remember from what specifically you heard 5 minutes ago? That is tough. You do a headphone cable swap out, that can be done in 10 seconds. You'll hear it. And we have convinced a lot of people who were naysayers or skeptical about the effect that a cable might have, really drop their jaws. And at that point, you realize, although it takes 5 minutes to switch speaker cables, you are getting a benefit from a better cable.
Same thing, yeah.
Because you've heard how much can change in 2 seconds with a headphone cable swap. And so it's kind of a proving point, because one, the room doesn't matter. The headphones are going right to your ears.
Right.
The headphone cable can be swapped really quick, and you can do your A/B comparisons. You can do blind comparisons, and you can really find out what cable can do. And at that point, you have a little more faith that the other cables that are a little more trouble to do all the swap out and A/B comparisons, at least there's a potential that there's something to be gained from them.
And that's one of my favorite things about the headphone shows is doing that swap, doing the A/B comparison, and have people go, "Oh my God!" because they think they can't hear you, right? And that sounds awesome, and he's screaming at you, because
they're wearing headphones.
Because they're wearing headphones, and yeah, so that is one of my favorite reactions.
Like I said, I don't try to get into the weeds too much on that argument, but I do think that if you have a little bit of disposable income, that it's just something to try out before you say no. Give it a listen. That's my only thing with those arguments, is that there are people out there that won't listen.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, if you're really into a science-based reasoning, why would you leave out the one thing that is literally the end result from your process of...
I often think in terms of the argument. Obviously, I come from a cable background, and so it's a bias. But I often think if ingredients didn't matter in terms of the quality of material, the quality of the engineering, the design, and the final build product in cables, that would be astonishing, because it would be the first thing in ever where the ingredients didn't matter. You know, if I was to give you a Hostess cupcake versus a bakery store cupcake, and you couldn't tell the difference, that's on you.
Right. And good for you. If you can't hear it,
and good for you. If you're happy
awesome.
with a Hostess cupcake, then good for you.
You're going to save a lot of money.
You can buy those anywhere and save a lot of money. If cable design, materials, and whatnot didn't matter, and you don't hear it, then good for you. You will save a lot of money. But, geez, that's actually pretty impressive that we have actually, if that was the case, we have come to the point where we found one thing that couldn't be improved upon with better materials.
Yeah. And I think, too, from my conversations with this podcast, even from a technical perspective, from a physicality sense, has been people who've said that a loose joint will actually affect the impedance.
100%.
Mm-hmm. So if you have a loose joint or something's getting crackly, it could affect it from a very technical standpoint as the impedance drops, and then there can be effects in the sound and so forth for that.
And we actually have there's a lot of recording studios that use our cables. You know, people that can use anything, and they can go to Home Depot. That's always the argument. Go to Home Depot, you can spend 50 cents a foot, right? And I'm like, yeah, these recording studios, you know, that are in Los Angeles that are recording Grammy-nominated albums that are using our cables, it's not accidental. We didn't give them to them. They bought them. You know, they can buy whatever they want.
That's cool.
And
You
it
can also
actually
go to
makes a
Walmart
difference.
and buy Walmart brand tires, and your car will move.
Right. It's true.
Let's just go back a little bit. So your father started the company, and then can you just kind of walk me through a little more of the history of Cardas?
Yeah, so 1987, about the time my dad was working for General GTE, the telephone company down in Southern California, and he was dealing with a lot of the analog to digital switching down there, and there's a lot of things that he did in that time period that still are in use today.
Oh, that's cool.
But he basically, you know, as a hobbyist was, you know, figuring out that stuff sounded better than lamp cord, right? Like, so he was going back and forth and trying things out, and you know, he would put things in and try things, A/B comparison, and he was starting this from the ground up.
Well, yeah. So he had a background in transmission line, you know, in transmission lines from the telephone company. He was getting into high-end audio. He had been a race car driver, and Angela's mom basically said, "We have 3 kids. That has to end." And so,
He was a race car driver?
Yeah, he was a pro-am race car guy, and he took a lot of his machinist from those days, who was doing cylinder heads and exhausts for him, started making spades and RCA connectors for him. His graphic arts guy from those days in the racing, who was also one of the guys who managed the racetrack that he used to race at in Southern California, became his graphic designer for Cardas Audio and designed our famous Nautilus shell logo.
Yeah.
So he basically brought everybody along into the HiFi thing, because that was another one of his passions, where this one you couldn't get hurt at. And started, and this is his passion came before his passion for wire. You know, he just liked his stereo and decided to start experimenting with cable and doing stuff in the garage, because he's a DIY guy, and he's always been kind of a tinkerer, and started doing his own cable, and realized that it could make a difference, and people liked what he was doing, and decided to do basically early retirement from the telephone company and pursue this as a thing.
Yeah, so he and my mom were still working full time while, you know, there were guys in our garage making these cables. So
Yeah, that's a pretty common story I found for a lot of the guys with some longevity. I mean, they kind of like, no one does it. No one quits their job. No one who, honestly, no one who's been successful has ever been one of the people who quit their job and just started doing audio.
Right.
They always kind of had this more cautious approach to it, which I think, when you're hanging your whole life on the line, is
Yeah, especially when there's a family. There's,
Yeah.
you know.
And my dad will tell you he didn't take any loans. He didn't do any of that. He was just, you know, he was basically working full time to pay the guys that were working in the garage.
And I don't know if he ever thought it was going to work, because I swear it's only been in the last 5 years that he stopped saying around Christmas time, "Well, we made it another year."
Right.
He stopped saying that, but he was saying that early on in my time, about 10 years ago.
So you've been with the company for 10 years then?
10 or 11, yeah.
11 in April, yeah.
Oh, wow. So what was it like back when you started? How do you kind of look at, you've been doing these shows for a long time then. Has the show circuit, has this scene that we're in right now, because we're at an audio show right now, has it changed in the last 10 years?
I have found that you just have to chase where that buzz is, because when I started Cardas Audio, my first job for Cardas was going to CES, back when CES had a true high-end section.
May it rest in peace.
May it rest in peace. At the Venetian. And for 3 or 4 years, it was hot. You know, I went to that show. I look forward to it every year. I kind of got burnt out on it, but for 3 or 4 years, it was the thing. And I could tell we have to go to this. And then it kind of started being on the wane, and we discovered the Munich show. The Munich show is what is currently hot. And Axpona, and then the Florida Audio Expo, and Rocky Mountain Audio Fest, and a few other domestic shows have kind of taken over the CES thing. Yeah. The buzz that existed at CES, I feel it here, I feel it in Munich, I feel it at Axpona and Rocky Mountain. So it has evolved in terms of where it is, and you got to, you know, kind of keep your finger on the pulse to find out where people are congregating and what matters. But the overall feel, you know, a good show is a good show, and, you know, a good show now feels to me like what CES felt like years ago.
It's really interesting that you bring that up, because I do feel like geographically, it's not only the buzz you talk about, but it's the same people. you literally see the same people.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
we have moved. The landscape has changed, and it's absolutely a weird kind of thing where it was CES and it is now officially almost no more. I think it's like
Right.
1 or 2 vendors there this year.
No.
Right.
So I went to CES starting. My dad walked around CES before Cardas Audio was really anything, and he walked around CES with cables around his neck and was trying to find dealers before he even was able to have a booth at CES. So that was probably 1986, 1987, and I remember going. I probably went 90. Probably my first time, 90. I don't know. I was 13, right? So I'm at CES in Las Vegas.
Most appropriate place for a 13-year-old to be.
You want your teenagers in Las
my God.
Vegas
So my parents.
Surrounding CES.
I
at a
think-
guys convention.
I have a 10-year-old son right now.
And this was during the porn convention years, too.
during the porn convention years. I remember being at CES, and that's where I got my shoe fetish from. I swear to you, is the porn convention at CES.
she's wearing Louboutin heels
I'm
right
wearing
now.
Louboutins right now, and I
Just
kid
like a
you-
stripper.
I kid you not. I was walking around 13 years old, and I'm a lucky person, right? Like I'm one of those people who wins things and drawings and stuff like that. And
wow.
we're playing the slots right at 13, and I'm walking around with the guys from Teal, I think. I'm walking around.
Not to incriminate them.
No, not to incriminate them, but I'm thinking now, looking back, I'm like, what are my parents thinking? Like, I was walking around Las Vegas.
You were the baby of the family. They
I was
stopped
the
caring.
baby. They lost interest long ago. But I'm like, I was worried. My biggest fear about walking around CES at 13 was that I was going to win the slots, and I was going to have to explain to them that I couldn't take the payout because I was 13.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, that's pretty. It must have been looser because when I was a kid and I went to Vegas, I would be like go up there and they would be on me right away.
Well, here's the thing. I didn't really look 13 when I was 13.
no way, kid.
Yeah, no.
I looked a little bit younger. And I remember because I was like, I don't know why. All I wanted to do was pull that thing and see the thing spin.
I probably looked 23.
Girls
when
get
I-
away with things.
Yeah.
Yes. Unfortunately, I'm familiar with that.
But yeah, CES, kind of the end of CES has been sad for me. We haven't gone in like 3 years now. So as a kid, a second generation audiophile going to this, I'm sad for the death of CES, but I do feel like there's so many more valuable shows now.
Did you guys have any idea why it went the way it did with CES? Was it
too
something
expensive.
about
Yeah, it was too
price?
expensive.
It was extraordinarily expensive, and when we looked at the expenses versus all the other shows,
We could
it
go to
was-
3
It
shows.
was many times
Yeah.
over, and I'm guessing that the other companies more or less saw the same thing. Clearly, CES is and was and continues to be focused on the convention center thing,
Yeah.
where
It's far.
Sony and Samsung are
It's
showing
very
off the
far,
hottest
yeah.
stuff, and so
And they
a
weren't
bunch
really
of expensive.
promoting, yeah.
Yeah,
They
they were
weren't
barely
promoting
promoting it. It was off-site. All these expensive stereos set up in a hotel room. It was weird that it ever worked. So as far as why it stopped working, because that's what makes sense. I don't know why it used to, but
Yeah, it was so expensive. I mean, it used to be a cool, cheap place to go, and it really was helping out these. Like Cardas Audio was a startup, right? Like it was an absolute startup in 1987, and my dad was able to pay for a showroom, pay for people to go for 4 days and stay in the hotel and all these things. And by the time it got to the end of it, it was like, 5 digits to go to this thing.
Oh,
It was
so you're
ridiculous.
actually saying that it was cheaper and the prices kept going
100%,
up.
100%.
Oh, wow.
Doubled, everything doubled. I mean, the food. I mean, Vegas used to be a affordable place to be in. It's just
Yeah.
not anymore.
Yeah, I mean the hotels used to be affordable. Every time during CS, I'm like, what happened,
yeah.
guys?
Well,
I thought it was
flights
cheap.
too. I mean, even flights. I mean, when we were in Southern California, we would drive, so it wasn't a big deal. But flying out of Portland went from $87 to $600 that week. Like, gee, I wonder if they know what's going on.
It's like buying roses around Valentine's Day. I'm like,
Exactly,
yeah, it's the same rose,
exactly.
right?
right.
You didn't coat it. Oh, there's gold lining the middle? No?
That's exactly what happened to CES. Yes.
So do you guys have how is Munich for our US guys? Do you guys been out
it's
there?
rad.
Munich is
Love
great.
it, love
It reminds you and ensures you that this is a real thing. The high-end audio, whether you're talking, because they even have a headphone thing now, from headphones on up to, six-figure systems, is a thing behind which there is a passion from the consumers and the manufacturers. And in Munich was really when I feel like we first started seeing families. You'd see a dude and his wife pushing a stroller. You never saw that at CES.
No, yeah.
And so seeing families, young families in their 30s, like
Fathers
really
and
gives you a
sons,
sense
yeah.
that, and fathers and their sons, and it's kind of like dudes bringing their kids to a car show or something. It's like it gives you the sense that there are people who are not in their 60s who care about this.
There's nothing wrong with that. We like them too.
Yeah, and those guys are good too, but there's got to be guys who are going to be 60 someday.
Hopefully.
And I feel like we see that here now. We see that at Expona. We see that at Rocky Mountain. But I feel like for me, in my experience within my 11 years in audio, seeing children and families and wives at audio shows began in Munich. Not that it didn't happen somewhere else, but in my observation, that was the first thing I noticed was, in addition to being an open floor show, that reminded me of how enormous this industry actually is. Yeah. They're filling up. The MOC in Munich is a very large convention center, and it's full of people and displays.
Yeah, it's four buildings basically of the open floor space, and then it's 2 or 3 of that second story that
What
has
they call the atriums, with the
atriums.
actual enclosed rooms.
Yeah,
So
the
it's-
enclosed rooms. It's really
It's
big.
the Disneyland of audio shows.
Yeah, I mean, we see people from the United States. We see our dealers, our U.S. dealers there, U.S. customers. I mean, we see everybody there because, again, Munich's easy to get to. It's fairly affordable to fly there, and then you're in Europe, so it's fun, right? So we fly into Amsterdam and do something different every year. So we always fly into Amsterdam, and then we drive to Munich. And this year we're going to fly out of Venice. So again, it's just an excuse to have.
It's such a tiny little continent.
Right.
So you go over there, you can see all these things you've only heard about.
Right, and it's just an extra week off work. What's that?
Work, expense account. Uncle Sam's listening. It's work.
We love Germany. It's awesome.
Oh yeah, I have not been, but I have done quite a bit of traveling through Europe, and I have to say, with the rail system and the way the travel works in inter-country there,
Well,
you
this-
can see diversity.
This one just wants to drive on the Autobahn.
Oh yeah,
That's all he
yeah.
wants.
it's. I'm a little scared of the Autobahn. I don't think
That's awesome.
I hear these stories of people driving and they're like going 80 and they're getting the finger from everybody
Oh, yeah.
passing them on
Oh,
the
yeah.
other side.
This one was 140 last year, 150.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you guys you rent a nicer car then? For
Yeah,
that?
you
'Cause
rented. We've rented BMW sedans a couple of
We had a
years in
6
a row.
Series last year.
And you can easily do 130, 140 for hours on end.
Hours.
And the roads, it's not, we live in Oregon where we have Interstate 5, and it is vastly different. It's hard to explain, but I feel like you're always kind of going up a hill or down a hill or around a sweeping corner where you can see for miles. Whereas on Interstate 5, you're sitting flat. You can't see in front of the pickup truck in front of you. Whereas on the Autobahn, you can see 50 cars in front of you. It's just something about the way they've constructed it.
Well,
That makes sense to be able to go that fast.
Yeah, well, and it's I have to say this from what I read. There's also not much grade. The entire thing is designed to go fast, and there's no up and down. You won't
Not
lose
much
traction.
I mean,
Yeah.
you go up and down a little bit, but just enough so that you can kind of see in front of you. Like if you're looking up a hill, you can see all the cars. So you kind of always feel like you can just see. If people say, "I wish we could have unlimited speed limits in America," yeah, for me personally. But not for everybody else. Because
for
I
you.
get it why we can't have that because our roads aren't like that.
And they're smooth and they're flat.
Yeah, and
they're
it's
nice
smooth and flat,
yeah.
and you can just see for miles, and
No
so
potholes
it's
and
amazing.
trucks.
It's a great. If you enjoy driving, it's the thing.
And I will say this as a kid who grew up in an area with not a lot to do, it is not safe. I asked you if you had rented a nice car because I've been like 120 in a not nice car.
Yeah.
And they're not designed for that. It gets very dangerous at
Yeah.
those speeds. It's
I'll-
dangerous anyways, but
I'll tell you, I sleep. He drives 140 miles an hour and I sleep. We basically hit the Holland border last year, and I woke up. I'm like, whoa, where are we at?
And we're going 90 miles an
We're
hour
going
because the speed
90.
limit dropped.
I would actually say at above 100, you probably can get some distance going. Like, boom, boom.
You
like,
make great time.
Yeah.
You make great time. And it's funny. We rented what was it, 640i
640,
GT last year, which is a great German touring car. And there's an enormous difference between 140 and 150. 150, you're like, no, not this. But 140 is solid as heck. And I'm sure it's all a matter of tires and aerodynamics and whatnot. But there's
Wow.
definitely a sweet spot where you.
So go to the Munich show. It's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I recommend it. But drive in.
Drive in.
Drive in. Fly in. Drive in.
Now, do you guys partake in the German drinking pastime of the beer gardens?
We partake in the Amsterdam thing and the German thing.
I'm from California. We partake in the Amsterdam thing too.
That's why you land in Amsterdam.
Actually, that's my people. I'm Dutch. I've never been there. But
Well, that's
I'd love to go.
okay. That is a great city.
Amsterdam.
In
I hear
addition
that
to
the
the
people are
coffee shops,
very
it is a
nice.
wonderful city.
Are the locals nice?
Amazingly nice. Amazingly nice.
Well, that's the biggest thing is because of our tumultuous political times now, right? Yeah. So we live in a very rural area, and my friends see me on Instagram and Facebook, and they see all the traveling we do, and I would say the number one thing that more of my conservative friends say to me is, "Aren't you scared?" Number one question, and I'm like, "Holy cow, you are insane!" They look at me and they're like, everyone is so nice. Everyone's, they love Americans, and we'll even say like, I apologize, we're from the United States, and they're like, no, you know who's awful? The French. The French are awful. They are awful. But no, Americans, we love Americans. You guys are so nice and friendly, and you smile.
Someone
will
come up to you and say something in German. You'll say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I only speak English," and you're embarrassed. And they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and they break into perfect English.
Perfect English.
I have got to go to that country because I was in France and I had a so-so experience.
There we go.
Yeah,
France and Belgium.
Oh no.
Yeah, they are very French and Belgish.
They're very French.
I actually spent some time in England as well, and I got to know the locals, and it was very cool. And they would introduce me like this. "Oh, this is Brian. He's American, but don't worry, he's cool." That was how they introed me.
That's 100%.
I think as long as you're cool, you'll be seen as cool.
As long as you're cool, yeah.
I'm sure there are the ugly Americans, and you just try not to be that.
Right.
And I think too, it goes hand in hand with the people who have the disposable income to travel while they're young and all this. Maybe don't have the most, they have, not all of them, but some of them might have this personality they throw that they get these stereotypes from and such. So.
Well, I got to think that people in other countries are expecting, oh, you're an American, you're going to be the worst. And as long as you're not the worst, you probably get the benefit of the doubt for being quite good. Like, if you're not completely obnoxious, then oh my gosh, you've beaten my expectations.
And we are loud. I will give you, we are loud.
We are loud.
Because
at the restaurants and whatnot, we're the
loud.
tables.
So we were on the train we were staying in downtown Munich, and the MOC is like basically a half-hour commute from downtown Munich to the MOC. And
the MOC being the convention center.
The convention center.
Is at. And
so we're on the train, and he and I are just talking to each other. We're just like, how are we doing? What are we doing today? And who are we going to see? And blah blah blah, and basically just having a one-on-one conversation. And all of a sudden, it occurred to me, there's like 80 people on this train, and we are the only people talking.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, that's where the obnoxious Americans.
And they probably don't like that. They probably don't like that.
That's where the obnoxious Americans.
It's like one of those moments when you're at a party and the music's like really loud and you're talking really loud and talking around, and all of a sudden there's a break and you say that, you say something horrible, and it's that moment when the music cuts out and you're just like,
oh,
right.
That's how it was on that train. And
goodness.
Don't tip either. I've gotten yelled at from our German distributor for tipping.
Yeah, because he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to have to start tipping.
Don't
Europeans
tip.
who tell you not to tip are people telling you don't ruin it for me.
yeah.
Their servers do not mind.
Right, but
sure.
I got yelled at for tipping.
We're like, oh, Americans, come on in.
Right. Whereas your German friend would be like, hey, come on, we don't have to do this.
It is a bit different. Do you think that the service is worse in places that don't do the tipping system?
Well, what's funny is in the United States, we expect a server to be on the ball. Keep your beer full, on you constantly, and as soon as you seem like you're halfway done, here's your bill. And you feel obligated to some extent to move out of the way. Like I've had my service, I've had my food, and they need to turn this table over and make money. In Europe, it's much slower. And they could give a crap if you stay there all night long, and you don't get your bill unless you ask for it.
Because they get paid anyways.
And it's considered rude if you are presented with the bill prior to asking for it, and because they're getting a flat wage. And so, kind of depends. If you're an American, you're used to American service, and you don't mind tipping for it. You go to Europe, and you're going to get European service, whether you're tipping or not, because they just don't move as fast.
And how does that agree with you? You like it?
I like it okay, but you do end up sometimes at 3 and 4 hour dinners.
Yeah. I'd much rather just eat and leave.
Right. I hear stories that from European families that they're like drinking is like a big part of the experience. You go there and you drink a little bit, and then you eat a little bit, and then you drink a little bit, and this thing becomes
and then 4
extended.
hours later. No,
yes,
I don't have the attention.
They
I have
extend
ADHD. I can't do that.
I like fast
They have
eating
longer
too.
attention spans.
That's my style.
I do not have that attention span.
I don't mind if I get a nibble. If that first nibble takes forever, I'm just like, food, no. But
Yeah, because we've had that discussion with friends of ours from Europe. We're like, we just want to leave. Like, we're done eating. And they're like, no, you need to enjoy it.
Oh, yeah, I got in
Take
kind of a
it back."
debate with our Swiss distributor's girlfriend because she was of the mind that it's rude to be presented with a bill, and I was sympathetic to the restaurant owner, thinking if this was my place, I'd want us out of here.
Yeah.
We're like 6 people taking up a big table. This is another $600 if they can get some more people in here.
Yeah.
And
Right.
she basically said, I don't care. This is my time.
Yeah, I find that very interesting because there was this one French couple that came over, and I could see them in the store, and there was like an Applebee's or something, and the waitress was like, "They've been here for 4 hours," and she's like, the first time she had ever seen that, like ever seen anyone stay
That's
at an Applebee's
exactly
for 4
what it's
hours.
like.
Yep, exactly.
She's like, "They're not leaving."
If you're at Applebee's for 4 hours, you better be sitting at the bar.
That's what I was thinking. I mean, I'm sure you've had it at the
And
bar.
I've done that.
Yeah. And again, I do think we just have that. We have the back of mind consciousness of table turnover.
Yeah,
Like, that's just
yeah.
it. Like, we want to get out of your way.
My favorite part is when you're in a town, and I apologize if this might be your town, when Applebee's is like the happening spot where you go, and the bar at Applebee's is like a
Yep.
thing.
It's hopping.
That's where we used to live. Bandon does not have an
No,
Applebee's.
we have nothing. We don't have anything
About
that
11
cool.
years ago, we lived in a town where Applebee's and Red Robin were the
the
thing.
two things.
Oh, Red Robin.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We
Red
got
Robin.
one. We got one close to my place. They got it.
We got nothing.
Yeah, that's one. But I'll say this on the flip side: the local tavern bar, there's a vibe there that you just don't get in the big cities.
Oh, absolutely.
You go there and the guy it's like cheers, and they know your name,
Yeah.
and you just have this really cool vibe.
We have that in Bandon. That's what we have.
Yeah,
in
we have
Bandon.
we have a great dive bar. One of my favorite bars that we have been in worldwide has been in England, which was in walking distance of an Airbnb we were at, and it was just a very English bar, and the lady called you
Sweetie.
sweet, or I don't know, something like babe, or I don't know, just something very English barmaid-ish. And so sometimes the other countries have dining experiences you don't have. Love, that's what
Love.
she called you. No, the beer, love.
Yeah, LUV.
LUV.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
That's
did
a
you
bit
say
of
that because I'm an American, or do you say that to everybody?
I would pull it back on track. That was a bit of a diversion. But so, do you guys have any work. What's
We got to
happening?
talk about work again.
What's happening? Tell me about your products.
Clear
I
reflection
don't know.
power.
Yeah, we have a
Yes.
new power cable called Clear Reflection Power that's being used in the MoFi room. We have a couple more on display here at the show.
Right, so 807 actually has a really cool room. It is the Paega speakers.
That's what we're on.
And
Yes.
they are a powered speaker, and they work on Bluetooth, and it is a really cool system if you're just getting started into, if you're just making the jump, especially from your phone to a system, it is super easy. So you have the speakers, the power cords, and the streaming device, and that's it. It's awesome for under, I think it was $7,000 or something for this whole system, and you're set, you're done, and it's a great way to get. That's what I think about it. Like, I think about getting into this. If you're going from basically, I have headphones on my phone, and I really love music, and I really wish it was playing in my house. Should I get an Alexa, or should I get something more than that? Right.
yeah.
So I'm like, what is that step? That's the hardest thing that I have as a manufacturer. Like, how are these people making the jump from, I'm a music lover, I love having music on all the time. How do I parlay that into my home? The MoFi guys really have, I think that's a really sweet system they have. It's really easy.
Yeah, sounds
really
great,
easy.
and it's simple
get
to
going.
set up.
So the power, any other analog cables to speak of?
We have
or-
a phono cable. So our flagship interconnect is called Clear Reflection, Clear Beyond Interconnect, and it can be configured as a phono cable as a single cable because it has 4 conductors and a shield. We have some people who are looking for the next step up, and we have figured out a way of making. It really comes down to the construction of how do you get a tiny little connector that plugs into the tone arm into 2 massive interconnect cables, and we have what we call a Clear Beyond Interconnect times 2, in which it joins the two. It is
the
very
name is times
Our,
two.
Basically
our
X2.
naming convention is very
we
easy.
spent so much time talking about the name, and we're like, screw it, it's times 2. But it joins the 2 cables in this really beautiful machined aluminum box that then extends into a DIN connector or whatever connector the customer needs. So it's kind of our ultimate flagship phono cable, and we're doing ground wires, which I don't know is ever going to be a huge thing in the United States, maybe in bigger cities. But when we visited Asia, where they
Yeah,
have a lot
Hong
of
Kong.
dirty power, and they are looking for, and they get a lot of benefit out of grounding to a central point.
It's one of those things we can't really test in Bandon.
Right, we don't have any noise in Bandon. The power is perfectly pure, and there's not even a TV
Perfect.
station, so
Right.
there's no RF.
But you go to Hong Kong and you're scrolling through the Wi-Fi things,
And you
yeah,
can
it's
hear
crazy.
if it's a grounded system or
100%.
not. So our distributor said, you guys have to start doing ground wires. So it's kind of this, not a lot of glory behind it, but
Helps the sound, yeah.
giving the people what they want.
Yeah. That's very cool. And you guys do digital cables too?
Oh yeah, we do a AES EBU, we do a coax, we got a couple of USBs, we do an HDMI.
If anybody's going to the Can Jam show in New York in Times Square next weekend, we're going to have Inuos is going to have our cables, and DCS they're going to have our cables as well. So, and we'll have a booth there as well. So it's a great way to test out the digital. DCS is going to have the digital. So yeah, it's going to be. There's a lot of cool stuff there too.
Cool. Well, hey guys, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Occasional Podcast Season 4. The Occasional Podcast is a production of the PartTimeAudiophile Network, which includes PartTimeAudiophile.com, The Occasional Magazine, the PTA Newsletter, and AudioHead.com. You can stay in touch with us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. The Occasional Podcast is produced and hosted by Brian Hunter, executive produced by Scott Hall at PTA Productions. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the Occasional Podcast on iTunes, Google, Spotify, or wherever your favorite podcasts are downloaded.